Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. All right, here we are. Great. Well, Jason Yarusi, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the Dear Business Coach podcast. How are you?
Great. Good to be here, Elizabeth.
Awesome. So I've had the pleasure of speaking with you a little bit before, and now I get to ask you some more detailed questions. And because we are recording in November, I have been listening to some of your work as we're getting closer to the end of the year. So might ask you about what you are telling us all about around this time of year. But actually, before I start asking you questions, I do want to read a little bit of a profile or a couple of things here that I know about you. I know you're a speaker. I know that you're an investor. I know you talk to others about investing, and you're also an avid runner. Is that correct? So a lot of your work is also focused kind of in the fitness world. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I'm a workout enthusiast, I would say. So I enjoy that as part of my day. And so a lot of our speaking goes to leaders, right, which across all formats, right, people that are looking to expand in our universe. But working out has been a staple for me to just regiment myself, discipline myself, and just set up my day in the right way.
Yeah, and so I have been connecting a lot with your content right now as far as setting ourselves up for success. And as an investor, maybe you should tell us a little bit about your professional background. I have YarusiHoldings.com and JasonYarusi.com. And so there's a couple of different resources there. And on the screen today for this interview, our listeners and viewers will be pointed to JasonYarusi.com. And so I can learn all about you there. But there's also some pretty impressive, I don't even want to say stats, right? But numbers and accomplishments are there. Your website's actually really exciting to look at. I feel like it would be worth everybody's time to take a look at just some of the background. And so in some of the areas on your website, I'm showing like 300 million acquired in assets and hundreds of multifamily investment properties. And so who is Jason? What do you do every day at work?
So our core business, Yarusi Holdings, we're an investment firm. And so what we do is we target apartment complexes that are down here in the Southeast. I live just south of Nashville. So we have apartment buildings in 7 different cities across 7 different states where we go in and we look to buy them at of course, a good basis, a good price, but look for ways that we can bring them up and improve them to meet the market. And entail that makes it a better place to live, right? Which makes tenants happier to live there and happier to come pay the market rent that matches the surrounding areas. And overall, that will increase the revenue on the building. At the meantime, we also look to optimize the expenses, which really builds up the bottom line, which produces great return for the investors that invest alongside with us.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like you're creating an experience for the people who live there, and then also you are achieving certain goals for your investors. Is this something that you have been working towards professionally for a while? How did you get into investing?
Yeah, so I left college without really much direction. Had a business finance degree and didn't have the inclination. I didn't want to go into business or finance, and ended up moving to New York City and working in
Hmm.
bars and restaurants. Wasn't really fulfilled with that role, so it finally got a little purpose within my life and started to put some steps together. So I went from working behind a bar to owning bars, owning a restaurant, owning and opening a brewery that I sold in New York City before moving into construction world. So I moved out to New Jersey, started helping my dad really grow and scale his construction business. So I did that for about 5 years before helping him get to retirement, while at the same time looking for the next step in our life. So we moved into real estate investment in 2012. Started proactively working on building houses, flipping houses, and on that. But that's a very active role, right? We were looking for things
Yeah.
that we could buy, large investments that we can manage, improve the operations. And so I came upon buying apartment communities. And so I did that back in 2015 and 16 and started acquiring apartment communities at that time, where we serve as the lead, where we find the opportunities and we put together teams that can serve the property. And you are right, it does serve on two sides, because we found that if the objective is solely one-sided, it doesn't make for a well-rounded investment. So be able to create a great place for tenants that ultimately serves the investors, because overall, a happier tenant, right, creates a better experience, which creates a better opportunity to create money, right, create revenue on the property, which trickles down to all sides of the results of the investment.
Right. Well, that's something that I think about as far as how do you balance reinvesting that makes the property a wonderful property aesthetically and rewarding for being there, for living there, or for tenants there. I don't I don't know why anybody would invest in a property and then just let it kind of depreciate. So how do you sell that? This is going to be sounds like a funny question, right? I get it. I agree with you. And if I'm going to be investing in something, I want to be proud of what I own, and I want to be proud to see it prosper and all of the things that go with that for the people who are in that building every day. But do you have to do you have to sell that balance, right? Do you have to sort of justify spending the money to make the property a wonderful place to be as well? Is that hard to sell to some groups of people?
So we are a for-profit business, right? So it's not a charity. And so when I say that we make it a better place to live, that tells in two sides. Sometimes the prior ownership groups either had a different vision, or honestly were not experienced, or just had other parts where their operations were not in line with the way we're able to operate, right? So we can go in there and put in a better team, right? So in many parts, I'm sure you've gone to businesses, and like two like-kind businesses, like two Mexican restaurants, right? You can have a wonderful experience, great operations, great food, great everything at one, where basically same food being offered at another restaurant, and they don't have the right staff, the right pricing. They don't have everything built in. So the experience, even though it's the same food, is
Are you a LinkedIn user? If you are, you can join me for LinkedIn Live Audio with Elizabeth every week, usually on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I will have a LinkedIn Live Audio where we talk about podcasting for executives who speak and podcasting for team leaders who speak. These are the themes that are currently running. If that sounds like something you're interested, visit me, Elizabeth Walker at Work, on my LinkedIn profile.
lackluster at the other, right? So for us, we go in there, and part of that is that we may go, put up new branding, and may increase the curb appeal, just make the overall appeal better of the property. But at the same time, there may be tenants that we non-renew, or tenants that we have to evict because they're not in good standing, right? They're not good tenants for the property going forward, right? So we try to work with them, but it's also not charity where we can let tenants stay there and live for years. And so you come into a property and they potentially let in tenants that honestly create issues in that part. And usually when you get into a new property, that might be no tenants, where it might be, as high as 20% of the tenants, right? And those 20% of the tenants take down and detract from the other tenants that are just trying to have a happy life and live their life. So we go in there and, of course, put the property on scale to make it meet the market, but then also set up certain protocols and certain procedures where new tenants or existing tenants have to meet those procedures, because it starts setting a new high barrier for the property of where it's going.
Okay. That does make a lot of sense. It's almost like almost like a redesign of community a little bit.
It,
Um,
you'll see a lot of times, like under new management, right, or under new ownership.
mm,
You see that out there. It's a very similar context, is that we go and we take properties and we transform them, right? Sometimes it's as simple as it's just changing the ownership. Not to say others don't do a great job, but sometimes they're mom and pop operations where, the dad has been running it for 30 years and he's got no books, and it's just how it is. And sometimes people pay on the first of the month. Sometimes they pay in the 20th of the month. Maybe they're paying for things that don't really, they shouldn't be paying for the tenants. And the operations are a mess because they don't know what they're spending, right? So you go in there and put a refined operation in, right? So that could be one part of it, right? So it doesn't always have to be something of a dramatic experience. It's more just putting in a system, and the
mhm.
system starts to create a lot of value in the property because the system can be replicated across others.
Okay. Yeah, well, I really like the way that sounds. Well, this might be a good time to kind of bridge over into how you teach, how the fitness enthusiast in you also comes together with the business world. And um I was listening to you talk on your podcast, the Live 100 podcast this morning, and you were talking about getting ready for 2025, and some of us are just waiting for New Year's Eve to party, right, and then wake up and not be ready for what we said we really wanted to do in 2025. And it made me kind of think about about things that I'm learning how to do, for example, to prepare myself for a good night's sleep so I'm feeling better the next day and ready to do the things I want to do. Did the fitness enthusiast in you blend with business early on, or is this something that is recent for you? How do you put these two together?
I've always been interested in sports growing up. Was really part, and but I just grew and grew more into, like, this is what I do with part of my working out, right? And so the business I continued to learn and expand into, right, as I build up confidence in myself, right? And so many of the parts, they've gelled now, but for many years, right? Like sometimes you can be good in one aspect of your life. Like if you have faith, finances, family, fitness, you have on those. Sometimes you're really strong in one part, right? So say you're strong in fitness, but you're lacking in your family, you're lacking in your finances, you're lacking in your fitness, right? Or I'm lacking in your faith, right? So sometimes you can serve one part, but the way you're doing something has gotten you to that success, right? So maybe you have a really regimented approach with your working out or your fitness, right? But you don't cross that over with the same thing of how you show up within your family, right? The regiment approach you set up with your family or with your finances or your business, right? So sometimes we have to look at what we're doing good and then what we're not really pulling our weight in, and ask ourselves, what's the difference? And the difference is that you have some approach that you've put in, that you've disciplined yourself to in one side, but you're not using that same approach in the other ones. And when we think about preparing for next year, a lot of people are just turning it off, just saying, you know what, it's 45 days left. So let me just, pack it in. We have holidays coming up and I'll just get back after it. But, that's the same thing we do each and every year, is that we tell ourselves that a future date is going to produce some different result for us. We get to New Year's Day or a couple of days after, and we're ready to go out there and take action. And then life happens again, right? We get busy, and all of a sudden something disrupts us. And here we are, there are 10 months after that at the end of 2025 saying, well, can't wait for 2026. And at a certain part, the only scenario here is that you can continue that and then constantly be stretching and constantly being out of reach of where you want to go. Or you can start right now. You can start right this moment and start putting actions into play, right? Small actions each and every day. And if you did that for the next 45 days, where do you think you're starting 2025? New Year's resolutions, it's 92% of them fail. And you ask yourself, like, why do 92% of New Year's resolutions fail? It's because we try to start something that we haven't done for potentially days, weeks, even years, and start at 100%, when in fact there's no foundation, there's no basis, right? There's no buildup, there's no momentum. And so we start, it becomes staggering because it's hard to keep up with it. Like if you haven't worked out in 7 months and you start working out again, and then a weekend you're so sore, or or you've just overdone it, and then you take a few days off, and that slowly unravels, and you slowly lose that capacity to keep going again.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar. Right. The momentum matters a lot. Do you, when I would, do you blend this kind of teaching into, to your keynote speaking?
I do. So the Live 100 message is built on 3 foundational blocks: break, build, and magnify. Because you have to break what's no longer serving you. So, right. So breaking the habits, right? Breaking the steps you're taking right now that are putting you in a position you don't want to be. Then you start to have to build the new you, right? So where is it that you want to go? What are the things that you want to achieve? And then once you start to have that roadmap, you can start magnifying the results, right? And many times we try to magnify who we are without having a roadmap built. But once you start having a roadmap, you start intentionally executing, right? You start accelerating your growth. Then you can go magnify yourself to new levels because you now have the basis to go expand that.
Okay, so for example, if I this is actually something I hadn't thought about before, trying that you could potentially be magnifying yourself before you're ready. So I mean, the first example that I could think of for myself is when I am feeling really motivated to work on a project or something work related. I get excited. Maybe I stay up really late a couple of nights in a row working on something, and that gets me off track. Sometimes I can't recover from that for a week or something. Would that be a good example?
It could be an example for sure. You look at it is that sometimes we're looking at the results before setting up the actions, right? So you stay up late, great, you're excited about something, but what's the action that you're doing, right? And what's the result that you're seeking, right? Because sometimes we stay up and we're doing activity, and we don't know what we're actually looking to solve with the activity. So very simple one, like someone wants to make $1 million but has never made a dollar, right? So someone wants to go outside, maybe they have a paycheck to get every week, but they want to go start a business and they want to have $1 million, but they've never solved how to make $1, right? So that part, you're seeking $1 million, but you haven't made a dollar yet, right? So the part is, what are the actions we need to take to start generating some leads that can potentially could start getting us in front of customers that could potentially create sales, right? And so you think about that at any level, is that we go from, fitness could be another one. Like, I want to be 40 pounds less, right? But you haven't thought about 2 things. One, what's the first step? What's the first step you should start doing? So is it diet? Is it some workout regimen? And then 2, how are you going to show up when you're 40 pounds less? Right? When we lose weight, many times we gain weight back because we haven't put in our mind who we are going to be when we've lost that weight. So, you could lose 40 pounds. Sometimes people lose it very quickly, and they get to the stage where they have 2 decisions, like just keeping this crash diet that's not sustainable, right? Or do something different. And they don't know how to live as that person. So they start allowing old habits to creep back in. Oh, if I just eat Wendy's tonight and then have a shake, won't be a big deal. Then tomorrow, I'll just have a bacon, egg, and cheese and a drink from Starbucks. And then all of a sudden now it just unravels and unravels and unravels because they haven't asked themselves, what don't I like about where I am? And when I get to this new person that's 40 pounds less, how do I start to show up at that person? Like, why am I doing that? Oh, I want to have more energy. Why do you want to have more energy? Why? I don't want to be winded walking up the stairs. Okay. And when you're not winded walking up the stairs, what is that going to produce? Well, then when I'm around my family and they want to go outside and go walk in the park, I won't feel so awkward about doing it or saying no to it. Right. And so it starts to set fires in your mind of putting reason for why you're doing things. And when you start setting those actions into place, then the actions you're doing have a payoff. And when you get to the payoff, right, then you realize why you're there and who you're going to be when you get there.
That's a really interesting way to say that. So who am I going to be 40 pounds lighter? And when I heard you say that just now, I was thinking, well, I'll just be happier and I'll just be a better me. And that's all I need to know for now, right? I like that idea of also of thinking about I'm glad that you made the end goal, or seemingly so in that example, being able to take a walk with your family when prompted to go. I definitely have been in that position where I'm just too tired. You know, your kids ask you to do something and you just don't have enough energy, and that's a really depressing feeling to have. And so I appreciate you telling that story. And then the story is, I want to be able to take a walk with my family. You know, it's not be on the cover of a magazine.
Right.
So I think that maybe are there it's easy for me also to follow you on a story like that is a journey of fitness, because we all can kind of relate to that a little bit. But if I have goals of learning about investing or real estate, or if I'm following your content, is there kind of something like that in business or day to day health
Oh,
within our day to day
all day
practices
long.
that
Yeah.
you could also walk us through? I know.
Sure. So think about setting up expectations of a goal of money you want to have.
Mhm.
Most of us, we say some number that has truly no meaning, right? $1 million. That's the easiest one to say. When I have $1 million, then I'll be
Mhm.
happy, right? That's so easy to say. But the question is, well, why? Like, what is it about $1 million? And 99% of people can't answer that. Oh,
Mhm.
well, then it'll be a lot of money. Okay, so what does that do? Does that help you in some capacity? Does that make you happy? Does that, stop your life that you're now set for life? Well, what does that actually solve? And most people can't answer that question for the simple reason is that they don't get back to what actually is the number they actually need. So is the goal here that you want to have enough money coming in each month that you don't have to worry about your expenses because your expenses are covered, right? And so if that's the question, then the next question is, well, how much do you spend each month? And most people can't answer that question, right? So you have to actually look at it like, okay, I'm spending $1,200 a week on XYZ, or I'm spending $3,600 a month, right? Then you say, okay, I'm spending $3,600 a month right there, so I need about $44,000 in passive income. And so if you have that target now, and you say, well, I want to just feel free, and to feel free, I need to be rid of having the feeling of constantly tracking down money for my expenses. So now I have investments that are giving me back enough money to cover my expenses. So now every dollar I make after that is profit, or can be invested, or can be used to go on adventures, or can be used. Well, now that starts to set the standard, right? Because if you just say $1 million, it has no meaning to you because it becomes fleeting because it doesn't have, there's no resources, no backing for you to want to get there. Because if I gave you $1 million, say most people are like, okay, cool. And it might be 10 times more than someone needs, or it might be 10 times less than someone needs, right? We don't know because people don't look at the hard things of what's under the cover, what they're actually spending or what they're actually trying to do, right? So you're saying, well, when I have this result, then I'll feel this. And that's a scary proposition because X doesn't equate to Y, right? Usually as you're upon the journey, right? Life doesn't stop. If someone makes $1 million tomorrow, it's not like the next day everything stops and you just stop in this place of time. Like life just keeps going on. So now you have to live with that person who has $1 million, and maybe you haven't set up the basis for how you're going to, again, like we talked about the losing 40 pounds. If you have $1 million, how are you going to show up as that person? And some people might be saying like, okay, great. I'm not going to spend anything for 6 months. I'm just going to live with the money. And then I'm going to, go and buy a car that I have. And then I'm going to, have fulfilled in my mortgage with my house. And then I'm going to put the rest into, an ETF. Okay. So that's one person. And that person may is prepared. But then there's another person that says, well, I get $1 million. I'm going to go to Vegas. I'm going to buy, a mansion. I'm going to buy 3 sports cars. And then all of a sudden that money's gone, right? And now it's gone in 6 months because they didn't know how to be prepared for when they have that money, right? So it's that same thing of building up the foundation for where you want to go, is that looking at how you're going to show up when you ultimately achieve that goal, but why do you need that goal?
Are you surprised sometimes about people coming to these answers? You said some people don't have an answer. Do you do this exercise with clients?
Oh, all the time. My wife has served in this part because it's one of those things. It's when you are struggling with something, the easiest thing to do is try to, put your hands over your ears or cover your eyes and just ignore it. And then just hope hope it disappears or just resolves itself, right? And that's how a lot of us face difficulty is that we just try to wash it over, right? Oh, if there's bills coming in every month and I can't pay them, I just want to not deal with them. So I'm just going to try to ignore them and hope they, rectify themselves. And unfortunately, it's just not how the world works, right? So the hardest thing to do, but the best thing to do is just be truthful. Because what you can do is if you know how much you're spending, well, then there's two things, right? You can look at your spending and ask what's crucial, right? And potentially like what you're spending too much on. Like you see those commercials about like looking at the subscription. Sometimes people are paying
Mhm.
for like 9 different things that they haven't used in 4 years, and then they shut it off, and it's like $400 they're saving every month, and they're saying they're barely breaking even, and they have no money to invest, and now they've just figured out $400 back because they've actually looked at it, and now that $400 could be 10 different things that they could use it for, right? Or on the same end, if you're spending appropriately, right, then you need to figure out how to make more money, and then we can set up the plan for that. Okay, so if your every dollar is accounted for, right? Well, then we have to look at the way you're making money. If your goal is to create, more revenue, right, or more money in your pocket, then we have to look at how you're making money and either refine that or create a new transition to create more opportunity for you.
Transitions. I'm looking at your page. So it's jasonyarusi.com and that's JASONYARUSI.com. What would you suggest that I look at first?
In terms of my website,
Yes.
yeah, there's some free assessments there. You can go there. There's a free assessment you can take, and that Live 100 assessment just allows you to answer a number of questions. And this is a lot for you because many times in life, we it's hard for us to look and see how we're actually showing up, right? Because we're our own person. We're not looking at ourselves. Like if we see someone else, walking in the street or come into a store and they're either very happy, right, or they're very mean, or the part we can see how they're showing up, but that person is not looking at themselves. So sometimes it's hard for them to truly identify how they're showing up, right?
Hmm.
Because we're always looking outwards, right? We're always putting focus or blame or emphasis on others, and it's hard for us to turn the finger and point back at ourselves, right? So this assessment is entailed for you to go through it and answer a number of questions that dictate through the Live 100 principles, and you can answer these questions and just have an idea of where your starting line is because we always think we need something more, right? When I
Mhm.
take one more class or I meet this one person or I get this job or I have this much money or I get to this certain body, then I'll start, right? And that's something it's fleeting, right? It never, you're always going to expect something else when you get closer to that. So you never get started. But where you are right now is you have everything you need to get out there and take action. And so you just have to identify where your starting line is because the growth is in the next step. And we get so scared to take that first step because we think it's this giant, massive step, when in fact, you're stepping off a curb, starting your journey. And that's where all the lessons are learned.
Well, it does give you a little bit of a head start if you kind of jump in and do your homework a little bit. Well,
Correct.
I'm on jasonyarusi.com. So I was hoping you were going to say that because the free resources tab is right here. So up in the upper right hand corner, um, you can click on free resources and I can take the Live 100 assessment. So I have jasonyarusi.com will be on the screen for listeners while we're watching this. And is there anything that I haven't covered you would like me to make sure we include today?
It's been a great talk. Appreciate the great questions and the great conversation. And honestly, just if you've been thinking about something to do right now, starting right now is the scariest thing you can do, but it's the best thing that you're going to look back and thank yourself for in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and I'll have to bring you back and so you can help me review my assessment.
I love it. That's great. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks, and I hope you have a fantastic holiday season. Talk to you soon, Jason.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Elizabeth in Floyd, Virginia. This has been an episode of Dear Business Coach.